The power of stories that change lives. Imagine standing on the shores of the Sea of Galilee, where the sun casts a golden glow upon the water, and a gentle breeze carries the voices of a gathered crowd. They have come from villages, fields, and distant towns, drawn by the words of a man whose teachings stir the soul and challenge the heart. This man, Jesus of Nazareth, does not speak in lofty theological arguments or complex philosophies. Instead, he tells stories, parables that seem simple on the surface but contain the very mysteries of heaven. Why does he do this? Because stories are powerful. They penetrate beyond intellect and reach the heart. They reveal truth in a way that mere instruction cannot. His parables are not just words. They are mirrors in which we see ourselves, doors that open to deeper understanding, and calls to action that demand a response. Whether he speaks of a sower casting seeds, a lost sheep wandering in the wilderness, or a rebellious son returning home, each story carries a message meant to transform lives. These are not just ancient tales, they are eternal truths. And today, as we step into his world, we must ask ourselves, will we truly listen? Will we open our hearts to wisdom that has echoed through generations? If so, let us begin this journey together, immersing ourselves in the parables of Jesus Christ, lessons of faith, redemption, and the kingdom of God. Before we dive in, we invite you to be part of this journey beyond today's teaching. Subscribe to this channel and stay connected with us as we continue exploring the deep truths of Scripture. Your support helps spread these life-changing messages to others seeking wisdom, guidance, and the hope found in Jesus Christ. Don't just watch, be a part of this mission. Click the subscribe button, and let's grow together in faith and understanding. Now let us set the stage for the first parable, where a sower steps into a field, scattering seeds, some falling on rocky ground, others among thorns, and still others on good soil. What does it all mean? Let's find out. The purpose of the parables. Jesus sits among his disciples, teaching. A disciple leans in and asks, "Disciple, Master, why do you speak to the people in parables?" Jesus, "Because the secrets of the kingdom of heaven have been given to you, but not to them. For those who have, more will be given and they will have abundance. But for those who do not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This is why I speak in parables. Though seeing they do not see, though hearing they do not understand." Jesus used parables to reveal divine truths to those willing to receive them while concealing them from those whose hearts were hardened. But what are these stories? Let us listen and learn. The parable of the sower. Jesus stands before a crowd by the sea. He lifts his hands and speaks. Jesus, a sower, went out to sow his seed. As he scattered the seed, some fell along the path and the birds came and devoured it. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly but withered because it had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. But still, some seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. The parable of the mustard seed. Jesus turns to the crowd, his voice calm but powerful. Jesus, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches. The parable of the Good Samaritan. Jesus speaks to the crowd. Jesus, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and left him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He bandaged his wounds, poured on oil and wine, and brought him to an inn to take care of him. Who is our neighbor? Jesus teaches that true love and mercy go beyond boundaries and prejudice. Will we be like the priest and Levite, or will we show mercy like the Good Samaritan? The parable of the talents. Jesus, a man going on a journey, called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his ability. The first 2 invested wisely and doubled what they had. But the third, out of fear, buried his talent in the ground. When the master returned, he rewarded the first 2 but rebuked the last for his lack of faithfulness. God has given each of us gifts and abilities. Will we use them wisely for his kingdom or let fear hold us back? The parable of the wise and foolish builders. Jesus, everyone who hears my words and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. yet it did not fall. But everyone who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The storm came and it fell with a great crash. Where is your foundation? Are you building your life upon the rock of Christ, or on the shifting sands of the world? The parable of the lost coin. Jesus, suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she does, she calls her friends and neighbors and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin." In the same way, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. God values every soul. If you feel lost, know that He is seeking you with great love. Will you return to Him? The parable of the two debtors, Luke 7 verses 41 to 50. Jesus told this parable when a sinful woman anointed His feet in a Pharisee's house. Jesus, a man had two people who owed him money. One owed a large amount, the other a small amount. Neither could pay, so he forgave both. Who do you think loved him more? Simon, the one who was forgiven more. Jesus, you are right. Narrator. Jesus then turned to the woman and told her she was forgiven because of her faith. This parable teaches that those who realize how much they have been forgiven by God will love Him deeply. The parable of the unforgiving servant, Matthew 18 verses 21 to 35. Peter asked Jesus how many times he should forgive someone. Jesus answered with this story. Jesus, a king wanted to settle accounts with his servants. One servant owed him an enormous amount and could not pay. The king forgave the debt completely. But this same servant found another who owed him a small amount and demanded repayment. The debtor begged for mercy, but the servant refused and threw him into prison. When the king heard this, he was angry. "King, you wicked servant, I forgave your great debt. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant?" The king punished the servant. Jesus warned that God will treat us the same way if we do not forgive others. The parable of the leaven, Matthew 13 verse 33. Jesus compared the kingdom of heaven to something small but powerful. Jesus, the kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman mixed into flour until the whole dough was leavened. Just like a small amount of yeast changes the whole dough, God's kingdom works invisibly but powerfully, transforming hearts, families, and societies over time. The parable of the dragnet, Matthew 13 verses 47 to 50. Jesus, the kingdom of heaven is like a fishing net thrown into the sea. It catches all kinds of fish. When full, fishermen pull it to shore, sorting the good fish into baskets and throwing away the bad. Jesus explained that this is what will happen at the end of time. Angels will separate the wicked from the righteous. The righteous will enter God's kingdom, while the wicked will face judgment. This parable reminds us to live righteously and be prepared for God's judgment. The parable of the rich fool, Luke 12 verses 13 to 21. A man asked Jesus to settle a dispute over inheritance. Jesus warned about greed. Jesus, a rich man's land produced a great harvest. He thought, "What should I do? I will build bigger barns to store my grain. Then I will relax and enjoy life." But God said, "Fool, tonight your life will be taken from you. Who will get all that you stored?" Jesus taught that life is not about wealth but being rich in our relationship with God. We should focus on spiritual treasures rather than earthly riches. Jesus often taught using parables, which are simple stories that carry deep spiritual meanings. These stories help us understand God's kingdom, His expectations, and how we should live. Today we will look at 7 of His parables and learn important lessons from them. The parable of the barren fig tree, Luke 13 verses 6 to 9. A man had a fig tree in his vineyard, but for 3 years, it had not produced any fruit. He told the gardener to cut it down since it was useless. However, the gardener asked for 1 more year to take care of it and help it grow. This parable shows us that God is patient and gives us chances to change, but there is a limit to His patience. We must live lives that produce good results for God. The parable of the wedding feast, Matthew 22 verses 1 to 14. A king prepared a great wedding feast for his son and invited many guests, but they refused to come. Some ignored the invitation, while others mistreated the king's messengers. The king became angry and invited anyone from the streets instead. When the feast began, one guest was not wearing proper wedding clothes and he was thrown out. This parable teaches us that God invites everyone to His kingdom, but we must be prepared by living rightly. The parable of the great banquet, Luke 14 verses 16 to 24. A man prepared a large dinner and invited many people, but they all made excuses and refused to come. The man then invited the poor, the blind, and the lame instead. This parable tells us that many people reject God's invitation, but he welcomes those who accept it with an open heart. The parable of the two sons, Matthew 21 verses 28 to 32. A father asked his two sons to work in the vineyard. The first son refused at first but later obeyed. The second son agreed but never went. Jesus explained that the first son did the right thing because he actually obeyed, even after refusing at first. This story teaches that true obedience is shown through actions, not just words. The parable of the watchful servants, Luke 12 verses 35 to 40. A master went on a journey and told his servants to stay ready for his return. Some were prepared and welcomed him when he arrived, but others were lazy and unprepared. The master rewarded the faithful servants and punished the careless ones. This parable teaches us to always be ready for Jesus' return by living faithfully every day. The parable of the lamp under a basket, Matthew 5 verses 14 to 16. Jesus said that people do not light a lamp and then cover it. Instead, they put it on a stand so it can shine and give light to everyone. In the same way, we should let our good deeds shine and show God's love to others. The parable of the wicked tenants, Matthew 21 verses 33 to 46. A man owned a vineyard and rented it to tenants. When he sent his servants to collect the harvest, the tenants beat and killed them. Finally, he sent his son, but they killed him too, hoping to take the vineyard for themselves. The owner punished them and gave the vineyard to new tenants. This parable shows that rejecting God's messengers and his son leads to judgment, but those who accept him will receive his blessings. Conclusion. These parables teach us about faithfulness, obedience, and God's kingdom. They remind us to live for God, be ready for Jesus' return, and accept his invitation with a sincere heart. Will we be like the watchful servants and the obedient son, or will we reject God's call? Let us reflect on these lessons and choose to follow him every day.